Welcome to another episode of Jujitsu Therapy with Chris Mize. I am Coach Chris Mize. Here with me today, we've got Coach Jonathan Andrews, and running the board and all existence that we know of, Coach Chris Boland, the man that makes it all happen. So if you're not tuning in to Coach Chris's own personal podcast, the Furlough Podcast, please do so. He's had some killer ones, just lately. So if you're not tuning into the Furlough Podcast, please do that. I think you will not regret it in the least. Appreciate everybody listening to the podcast. I think we're getting a lot of good feedback. We're hoping that we're going to expand our nets a little bit here soon. We're trying to make some things happen. And but until then, please just keep tuning in like you are, and recommending us to a friend that has interest in jiu-jitsu or just stuff. But tonight's topic is kids training, and we couldn't decide if we were going to say kids or youth. I say kids because youth makes you think maybe a little bit older, but one of the common questions that we get is, what's the age that kids should start training jiu-jitsu? And Coach Jonathan, being an expert on this, he basically is head coach of some of our kids programs out in Trustful, and he works with some of our adult programs as well, but he kind of handles those kids very well, and he's used to dealing with stuff, and I help him out in some of the classes and stuff, and we used to do it all together, and then he's got to a point where he just kind of took some of it over, so I appreciate that. But so one of the things that we kind of look at initially is, again, we like for kids to start out about, I say 5 is really the youngest you can get kids training in jiu-jitsu. And Coach Jonathan, why do you think 5 is a good age?
5, for me, I think 8's the optimal age.
You're correct. Yeah,
5 is a little bit still undeveloped as far as that goes. There's very hard to get the details that you really want to get through. Right.
Well, people say, well, at the karate school down the block, they'll take them at 3 and 4, and I'm like, that's amazing. Because I don't even know how you get them to stand in line at 3 or 4 years old, but that's a thing. You need them to be able to follow instructions well. And again, with jiu-jitsu, there's a little more detail. You can't just let them run crazy. We're at that age, I think we're really focusing on movement and stuff, trying to develop some movement patterns and stuff that they can use later on in life and in, of course, jiu-jitsu, but it really transfers very well. I think when people say, why should a child train jiu-jitsu versus, let's say, a style of traditional karate or taekwondo or, those kind of arts, the striking arts. For me, in jiu-jitsu, we don't teach kids to be their first instinct to punch somebody in the face or hit somebody. And in this day and time, the political correctness of everything, we need to teach people how to negotiate situations and deal with things. And we spend quite a bit of time really having kids interact with each other and us, and whether you're talking about whether it's a bully situation or whether you're talking about someone like a stalker or something like that, we have the kids learn to communicate verbally, and I don't see that in too many other martial arts.
No. Whenever you get into the striking martial arts, you don't see a lot of interaction between kids, just because of the fact that it's a lot more aggressive in that sense.
I agree.
But as far as jiu-jitsu, the movement really helps. And if you talk about school, if you hit somebody, you're suspended from school, even if it's in self-defense. Right. With jiu-jitsu, you can control the situation, and it's less likely for you to be suspended.
Right. I think it gives you options. It lets you we actually teach basically de-escalation and how to try to work through things. And I think that transfers so well to life. And I know people are saying, yeah, right. But no, seriously, we do. We work on that. We have drills that actually work those things. And, this isn't about just our program as a whole. I think it's across the board. Unless you got kids that you just throwing them in there and letting them fight, like a kids' fight club or something like that. I think that would be different. And Coach Chris Boland is smiling and nodding his head yes. sure, there's an entertainment value, Coach, but not necessarily the way to kind of go with stuff. But it's just dealing with those things and teaching kids. You get all the benefits of the other martial arts stuff. We don't do katas and forms, but we're about teaching the movement pattern and the organic nature of movement, and just trying to get kids, like I said, doing the stuff. I did have a parent. I've had several parents even this year call, and they've had kids that were too young to train in our class, and I recommend them go to gymnastics. Gymnastics is such a great gateway into movement that you can carry with you for the rest of your life, I think. So I think gymnastics kind of sets the bar to where kids can come in and train other things after that. I mean, even little boys, I know sometimes there's that stigma, but listen, hey, gymnastics teaches you to move. It teaches you to have that body awareness, and we use that in jiu-jitsu all the time. It takes people forever to kind of get over that little thing and knowing how to move on the mat.
Just balance.
Yeah, I mean, and real life balance.
Yes.
I mean, and just tumbling. I mean, that's a handful.
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting, is the rolling over the neck and whatnot.
Right. Oh yeah, they always want to roll over their necks.
Yeah, they do.
But I tell you, kids are, and again, don't want to sound like a broken record, but kids spend way too much time on their devices playing, Fortnite, doing whatever they're doing, and they're losing their ability to, move around and do stuff. Kids don't go out and play anymore, so it's our opportunity to kind of get them out there and be able to deal with stuff, and just, working through things, and, the more experience that you can give a child, the better they're going to be at it. So, I think, like I said, it kind of just brings good things. It has all the benefits of the other martial arts, but then it has those jiu-jitsu benefits that only jiu-jitsu provides. Coach, what do you think are some of the challenges that you kind of have, when you're training kids? I mean, specifically children.
Specifically, that's a bit lengthy. You got
just hit on the couple of the top ones.
Yeah, you got their attention span. It's very hard to control. They like shiny things.
Yeah, herding cats. I've heard it. I think that it's like herding cats sometimes with stuff. And that's in best case scenario.
Yeah, another is just like the unawareness of self-control. Mm-hmm. They don't really know how aggressive they're going unless you tell them how aggressive they're going. And that's where it gets interesting whenever you're pairing them together. And we see this in adults too, where they just don't have that self-awareness and self-control to tame things down. And it gets interesting on those times.
I'll tell you, I think, and I was talking with some kids last week, and some parents were saying sometimes kids don't have healthy boundaries. I mean, on whatever, they like to touch other kids and stuff like that, and that's just not good. I mean, you need to break them of that early. I'd say that's what you need to do. You need to get them. They need to understand this is socially acceptable.
You get the coronavirus.
That's right. Get your fingers out of Tommy's mouth. Right now, so I mean, you have to. But now I have kids. They'll just touch. They'll just reach up and touch somebody's nose or hang all over them. That's just, you shouldn't do that. It's just not good. People need to learn. And even, I mean, it's not even their best buddy or anything. It's just they'll just hang on kids, and I'm like, that's just a bad kind of thing to kind of happen.
Yeah.
The other day we had some bad weather come through, and man, it was like in the air, dude. I mean, it was like, and Coach was telling me he had trouble with some kids, and man, I had 2 or 3 kids that were just acting like, I think the kids sometimes, depending on the sensitivity of them, they're kind of like animals. You know how your animals will act when the weather's going to be bad? You're going to have a stormy weather, and the cats and dogs are acting crazy.
The energy in the air.
The energy is the air. It's just these kids are just, I mean, they were just wild, man. And you hate to have to get onto them. It's just there's no satiating them at that point. I mean, they just trying to do that. And you just have to get on them, and they'll just do push-ups all day, You get them in there,
Well, I would find it, you say I'm good with kids or whatever, but I find it very difficult to deal with kids because they are so erratic, sporadic, and you in today's climate, even though the parents bring them there, you kind of almost a little bit uneasy if you go with a deep drill instructor type tone. It doesn't really matter what you say, but you got to throw a little bass in your voice. But by the same token, some parents don't like it and they don't understand it. And I think sometimes training the parents is more tough than training the kids.
Right. Well, that's a good point. I think one thing I found, and once they get to know you, I think that's a big part too. Once they know that you're kind of committed to what you're doing, is important. But a lot of times the parents, even though they might not have the ability to be that strong disciplinarian, that's why they bring them to you to help develop some good habits as opposed to bad habits. So yeah, I mean, we'll stiffen up on them definitely and try to do a lot of behavior correction things with them. And I mean, yeah, I've had to last week, I had to raise my voice in class, and it was like, it was like, and everybody freaked out, the parents were like, when I did it. But sometimes you just got to do it because they're just not paying attention. And then that will get them in line. Sometimes kids aren't used to that anymore.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying is, people are so, and not all people. I do know some parents that are authoritarian, if you will, with their kids, and they keep them in line, and I'm proud of them for it. But there are a lot of parents that I know that you can just tell by the way their kids act. If you even look at them funny, they kind of freak out. So their parents aren't the parents aren't raising no voices if the kid freaks out at the first little thing.
Yeah.
And so and back to what I was saying just a second ago is you got to let the parents understand where you're coming from. I'm not trying to be mean to your kid, but that's just how I am, and that's how I'm gonna. I'm not gonna be yelling and screaming all the time either. There was a report a while back where some NFL football player really made some parents mad because he came and did a camp, football camp with the guy, and he was just doing football guy stuff, yelling at the kids, and a mother was very upset about it, and he's like, hey, if your kid can't take it, take him home. And woo. And see, I would see myself saying a stupid comment like that. Well, and upsetting a mother.
But I think the reality of it is there's a and again, looking at how things can be taken so out of context, but you develop relationships with people, and they know you after a while, and they know how you are, and we have rules that we go by, and we have a routine. And if the kid who's been training for a while can't follow that routine, and again, after constant correction and probably even some counseling on the side and doing things like that, sometimes it's not a good fit. I mean, we've had kids that we've had to talk to. I mean, we were talking about we had a day class. We had a homeschool day class for a while. And, it got to be a pretty good-sized class by our standard anyway. And we've had some kids in there that, had to just talk because the kid would not follow instructions. And he would just do stuff just to aggravate and just show out and try to act out in class. And despite whatever, and he didn't want to he got to a point where he didn't want to do push-ups and be reprimanded anymore at it. And
so I wonder what his prison number will start with. Yes, I said it. I'm just kidding. He's probably going to grow up to be a fine young man.
Well, we can hope that maybe we'll have a positive effect on these people. And,
well, let me ask this,
sure.
And this is teetering off for some school owners, kind of cringe a little bit because I've asked this to the other thing. Obviously you want to keep a good number of students, and so you as a longtime instructor yourself, how do you think about balancing the line between okay, this is a business and somebody's paying me to do this for them. When is it a fine line between now it's too much, you got to go. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you were going to counsel a new business, a new school owner, we'll say Jonathan's going to, open a school in a few years or whatever, just he moves off to Montana or whatever.
or anywhere.
Anywhere, I'm just being funny because it's cold. But,
Leeds.
Leeds, yeah. So, but he opens a school, how do you find that line? I mean, obviously it's a personal line, but you want to build a good clientele, but then again, you don't want to build it to the detriment of well, I can't upset this one, versus the herd.
Okay, simple answer. That of course is also complex. Jonathan's been very aware of some stuff I won't get into, and we'll save one of these for a further podcast. Remind me later. I won't say it right now. But anyway, so the line for me is, after a lot of correction, mentoring, trying to make things better, talking with the parents and the child, if a child is being so disruptive that it is consistently affecting the quality of the training of the rest of the room, it's time probably for them to move on to something else, or maybe let them mature a little bit. Maybe revamp the medicine. In some cases, and I mean, in some cases that's what it is. You might need a little alteration in your stuff, because really that is a snapshot of life. I mean, for kids. I mean, if you can't, the opportunities that we give kids to try to, and our whole thing is about improvement. So I mean, if a kid, after repeated, and I mean that process that we're talking about, they start acting up, and again, very occasionally you'll have a child that was a very, like, a good child that will have a shift, that their behavior gets bad, and it's usually related to a personal thing at home or something that happens, and they're acting out. But a lot of times kids are kids, and they're going to be the way that they started, but some of them can actually deteriorate because they're a little reluctant to act out initially because they're not as comfortable. And as they get more comfortable, then, like I said, the healthy boundary stuff falls down more, their behavior and stuff. But if, like I said, if it's detrimentally affecting the other kids, at a certain point you have to do that. And it affects everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm a question asker, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask this question, not take over. And I may have missed this. I had to step out. I was the one making all the noise with the phone earlier. If anybody was curious when they heard that.
Damn you!
All right, Jonathan, you're a younger gentleman, and you teach youth. So, do you find it difficult as a younger gentleman that doesn't look as old as Chris and I,
right,
to garner? How do you? Let me rephrase that. As a younger coach, if you were going to talk about or talk to another younger coach, or somebody that's young that's just starting to coach, how do you deal with, obviously they don't look at you as an older person. They look at you as a young person. How do you garner your authority role in the situation and gain that control of the room? And if you, and I don't go to your class, I'm sure that you do you get pushback on that, as far as the kids don't, maybe because you have a younger face, that they just kind of look at you a little like, and rock on?
I'll say it's more taxing because, like you were saying, is they do try to push back because I am younger. But I would say because of how I was raised, I've got this mentality of, if I'm the authority figure, then you're going to either listen, or you can go and sit in a chair, relax, do what you want over there. Right. But as far as, like, if I'm leading the class, then what I say goes, and so you have to keep in line. And so I'm very lenient, but at the same time, I try to keep it more reeled in. And as far as the kids, they do see me differently from Coach Chris and you. Like, if y'all were to come in and have the class, they would fall in line a bit more quickly and be more...
I was told that I have an angry face.
Yeah, there's.
Well,
it's not bad to have one.
I think it's just you have a stern look at times.
Yeah.
This is a personal theory of mine, and Coach Jonathan and I have discussed this. I call it the kind of Power Ranger mindset to a certain degree. And again, Power Rangers get a big, that's why Power Rangers kind of ruined martial arts training for a while. I guess you could say Ninja Turtles did too, but really Power Rangers more so.
Ninja Turtles was shit.
But Ninja Turtles were Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
they weren't. But anyway, when they created Power Rangers, the kids, they were teenagers, and kids like to idolize people that they can see themselves becoming. So what it is that's why the Power Rangers were not adults. because they wanted somebody that the kids could relate to and have interest. They were teenagers. They were 14, 15, 16, or supposed to have been 14, 15, 16, right? Yeah. And that way it's like, wow, I want to be like that, and they could relate to them a little bit better. It gave them kind of a carrot to kind of reach for. And I think that's one thing with coach and stuff, and I think that's why it's very important to have kids, being taught by young adult people. And it's not just because they can kind of, and Jonathan, he knows what's, he's not, I don't know, I don't think he's a huge video game guy, but he knows what's going on now. And as we get older, we lose, even though we try to stay in touch with what's going on.
You lose a bit of that connection.
You do. And I think his ability he knows what they're talking about sometimes, and I don't know. I mean, they'll talk about some crazy stuff. I mean, anything beyond Sonic the Hedgehog, I'm about, and we were talking the other day, and it was in my it's an older group class in Cahaba, and it was like 11 and 12-year-olds, fixing to be teenagers, but they were discussing Sonic the Hedgehog and like the physics of Sonic the Hedgehog, about why Sonic can do this and stuff, and I was just like, they just lost me. And so anyway.
If they used the word physics, I was going to be
Well, I was
impressed.
saying that they were trying to make it sound, and one of the guys that helps over in Cahaba was just carrying on a great conversation with them like it was just, like it was rocket science.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just can't do that. Yeah. So, I mean, it was cool. It was cool that you can do that, though, because they do relate with you, on a level. I think that's good. And Jonathan, he does a great job with it, and he relates with them. But I think he's an old spirit.
An old spirit.
Yeah.
Old soul.
Old soul, that's right.
But do you find that same with the parents, though? Do you find a good rapport with the parents as far as they just kind of look at you because of your, young face,
Actually, when talking with the parents, they see, like, I've always been the youngest. I'm the youngest of my siblings. I'm the youngest of my friends. Like, I've always been the youngest, so I've always tried to be more with them as far as maturity than with
younger
my
kid.
age.
Yeah.
So I think with talking with the parents, they get a semblance of that, and they actually come to respect me a little bit more
That's
than
good.
people they would that are my age that don't have this mind frame.
That's good.
Plus, I think, too, when you have somebody that can convey information, too, and they look at him, they're like, wow, that guy's good. I mean, being able to convey information and work with kids and take time and really able to do stuff with kids, on a teaching and education level that, it would be hard for them. The reason people, this is the thing, we've all talked about this with each other, a lot of times parents or dads, because the dad, if a dad is present, a lot of times sometimes it's hard for a dad to send their kids to a martial arts school because I mean, back in the old days. Anyway,
it's an ego thing. Yeah.
And so I think it's a great thing, that they, of course, jujitsu now people know what it is and they understand the effectiveness of it. A lot of people anyway. So they see the value of it and they see it's something that does work. And but a lot of times, like I said, back in our time, my dad would be like, there ain't nothing they can teach them, that I can't teach them,
Sure,
But in jiu-jitsu, that's not true. Turns out we can teach kids stuff that a dad, unless he's a jiu-jitsu person, can teach them. But we're always, when we teach, you do the same, Jonathan, we all do it. We're always trying to train that next generation of instructors. What we're doing, we're trying to bring somebody to the table, that can, we're trying to find interest. We're trying to find that certain spark, an interest that people will do. And so when we share information, that's how we teach. So I know everybody doesn't do that. Sometimes you go to a jiu-jitsu school and it's more like you're going and doing a workout somewhere, where you just look, oh, this is the workout of the day. Everybody do your workout. Right. Everybody do this, everybody do that. And there's very little instruction. We're not like that. I mean, we'll go around, we'll share the wealth, we'll go around and
polish the rock.
Right, actually do that stuff. So, I mean, we take a lot of pride in that at our school, I mean, how we do, and that's just what we do. But, I think we just get better at it. That's a goal. Get better at working with kids and get better at working with parents and everybody else. And
well, you see a lot of these kids, and I won't mention names just because give people big egos or whatever, but there's the one kid that came up from South Alabama, and he started at a young age.
Oh, yeah.
and you try not to burn them out. But then again, though, if you can get them at a young age and have that full time, they're like little sponges.
Yeah.
And you can take a kid at me personally, I wouldn't train a kid under the age of 10.
Well, he's the young man that you were talking about started when he was 8.
Yeah.
But he was,
But
I think he was exceptional. I think he had exceptional ability to focus probably at that age.
But even still, if you start at 8 to 18, that's 10 years of a little sponge that's gonna soak up more than an adult who's got other things on their mind, paying bills, going to school, working, doing whatever.
Right.
So their little cups are empty, and you can really fill that thing up.
Right.
And I wish my son would do it more. He did such a good job at it that unfortunately he was just like that, but he didn't have the focus for it. But
well, he has a lot of other interests, in his other athletics, and he'll come back to it. I mean, that's just the way it is, and that's one thing I've never forced, either of my kids to do it, and one of them had more interest in it than the other.
Sure. But
they'll come back around to it, when it's the right time for them, and that's just the way. Some of them is, who was it said, one of my mentors said, "Yeah, once they get a blue belt, they can do whatever they want after that, but they're going to train till they get a blue belt." That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Once they get a blue belt, if you don't want to continue, that's your thing. But I want to make sure that you got that blue belt skill.
Right.
And that will, folks, if you don't know it, a blue belt for us genuinely is about like a black belt in a lot of other martial arts because of the time. It takes to get it. It takes somewhere between a year and a half, 2 years, just really,
depending on how much you train.
Right, depending on how much you train. And
the quality of instruction.
True. And I think a lot of it is when you talk about that young man you were talking about too, as Master Sauer would say, the jiu-jitsu water was pretty pure that he drank from the fountain, and so he was really good. And that, folks, let me tell you, that is a thing. Depending on, you got to have an instructor that teaches good jiu-jitsu. If they're learning all the moves off YouTube, guess what? I don't consider that good jiu-jitsu. You have to have those little details, and you figure a lot of it as you go on, and the details increase. But not to go down another rabbit hole. Sounds like another podcast.
There you go.
But anyway, guys, thanks for listening today, and Coach Jonathan, Coach Chris, thank you for being part of this podcast. And guys, again, if you haven't subscribed to the Jiu-Jitsu Therapy podcast, please do so. We would greatly appreciate it. Please comment. And like I said, we love feedback. We love an idea. If you have one that you'd like us to address, we'll pretty much talk about anything. I've got some good ideas around the corner that we're going to start hitting on. And some of them are kind of interesting and controversial. So, you know me. I'm no stranger to controversy. So, but anyway, until next time, have a good one.